Hi everybody, Jonathan Fields with Good Life Project. My guest today is my good friend Marie Forleo. Marie is a best-selling author, award-winning web show producer, Marie TV, and Oprah recently named her a thought leader for the new generation. So Marie, it's awesome to be hanging out with you.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, it's great. We've had so many conversations, and one of the things that fascinates me is that you have this incredible brand right now, and you have this tremendous presence. You appear so confident, so focused, so mission-driven, and successful. And it's really powerful thing to watch. I wonder when I look at this, when we sort of take a step back in your life, is this the Marie of always? Has this been like, you're just the powerhouse for your whole life, you were focused, you knew what you wanted to do?
Oh my gosh. So I feel like it's a little bit of a paradox because I've always been me, which is a bit zany and outspoken and boisterous and energetic. But in terms of the confidence or focused or any of that, absolutely not. And to be really honest, when you said, you appear so confident, I just want to make it really clear, while I do my business and I do what I need to do, I don't feel confident all the time. It's not something that, I wake up every morning and never have self-doubt. Or, when I'm doing something, even, recently going on Oprah, like feeling just terrified that I don't have things to say, or,
Right.
what am I really going to contribute here? Like, I still have all of those same thoughts and insecurities. I think just throughout the years, I've been able to train myself to not really get lost there as much as I used to, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I guess two questions pop up. One is, why is that still there at this point? And the other is how do you train yourself? What is it that you actually do to be okay?
I don't know anyone. I think the only person I've ever heard is Eckhart Tolle, who says that he kind of has completely separated from his ego. And he says, I don't know if it's going to come back, but someone will tell me if it does.
Right, yeah.
So he's totally open to that part of himself coming back in. But besides hearing about his experience, I've never met anyone in any field who doesn't have some sort of insecurity from time to time, or who doesn't doubt themselves or have bad days. So I don't expect it to really ever go away. And then in terms of the training, it was a lot of the work that I did early on in terms of personal development and getting that idea, which actually I learned from Eckhart, which is you have a mind, but you are not your mind. And recognizing that the voice that I listen to in my head is not really me, and all of the stuff that it says is not necessarily true.
Right.
That was like a huge relief in my life. But I'll tell you, the early part of my career, late teens and early 20s, I didn't stumble upon that wisdom yet. So I was, it was just, it was a mess.
So let's take a step back there then, because I think it'd be really kind of fascinating to track your journey a little bit from like where you started out to here, because and it was funny, and my hunch is that there's something similar with you, is from the outside looking in, it probably seems like you've bounced from like different thing to different thing to different thing, but inside, I'm guessing there is some sort of like unified theme that's sort of like threaded through them. So take me back, before you became Marie TV and sort of like what you're doing right now and really focused on helping women and building this bigger brand.
Yes.
What are you doing?
So, my journey really, it started kind of breaking through when I was 17 and I was in college, and I signed up for this class called Zen and the Art of Living. And I thought it sounded fun, and there was like cute guys that I knew that were taking the class. Of course, I was like, yeah, I'm going to take that class too. And the curriculum of that course was Deepak Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, that book. And I learned how to meditate. I learned about yoga. And that was kind of like my first entree point into the world of personal development. And I was hooked. I was like, why have I not learned this before? Why did I not learn this in grade school? No one ever taught me about this. Like, this is amazing. And discovering how to meditate at that age was, for me, groundbreaking. Because
I mean, that's huge. At 17 years old?
Yeah, I was. And it was really interesting for me because I was into it. I was really into it. I had a great teacher. And so that was kind of like that entry point. And I started realizing I had all this potential, but I didn't know exactly where I wanted it to go. And at that time, like, I loved dancing. I was studying in finance. I started out as a psych major, though, because I was fascinated with.
So there's like this thread of like trying to understand human nature.
Yeah, all the way back then. But one of the things was, there's two things about being a psych major that didn't really fly with me. I remember walking into my first class, and I was a freshman, and sitting down in this big auditorium, and it was like the first 15 minutes of class, and the instructor at that time, I'm paraphrasing, but basically the messaging was, the reason that everybody is screwed up is because your parents screwed you up. And I just remember looking around going like, this sucks. Like, it just felt so negative. And I was like, I walked right
and it's like
over.
somebody did something to you, and that's like, it's from the outside in.
And it was a very kind of, it felt like that particular framework was very blame oriented. And it didn't feel good in my body. So I walked over to the registrar and I said, I want to change my major immediately. And I changed over to business. And I said, I need to do something like more positive, more forward acting. And plus, I always knew that I wanted to make a lot of money.
So what's behind that?
I don't know. I think there was this, well, I know a little bit about what's behind it. My parents, I grew up in Jersey. It's like Italian-American family. Yeah. There were plastic covers on the couches. My mom knows how to stretch a dollar bill, God bless her, around the block 5 times. But I remember growing up, there was a lot of fights about money. And I made a decision when I was young that I never want to have money be a source of like fight with people that I love. I just want to have enough so it's a non-issue.
So for you, it wasn't really about money. It was just about taking a major point of conflict off the table.
Yes, and as a kid, I had those two things associated.
Yeah, right.
And of course, as an adult, I know there's a lot more going on. However, it was a decision that I was like, yeah, I don't want to deal with that.
So you come to these realizations that, one, you don't like the way sort of like psychology has been introduced to you just right off the bat, and money really matters, or that deeper source of what it's about really matters to you.
Exactly.
And you move over to business. So what happens from there? Where do we go?
So there it was, I love learning. And so I was taking law classes, I was learning a lot just about traditional business, like business finance and statistics and all the stuff that I didn't really get into, but I was going to stick with this major just because that's what I was doing. And by the time I got out of school, I knew that the only place that I could really survive, I knew I couldn't be at a desk job because I had too much energy and that felt like death to me. But I got a job in the New York Stock Exchange. There's no seats. You're running around like a maniac. You work until 4.
Yeah.
It's insanity. And that was really exciting to me. But I was 21 and that was my first job. But the moment I got there, I started getting this feeling inside like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like, this isn't it. But what was terrifying for me was that, I just spent 4 years studying business in college. Right. And this is kind of like a dream job for a lot of people to get, to be able to be on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It's pretty cool. And I didn't want it. But the terrifying thing was I didn't know what else I wanted to do.
Right. So you just kind of stay.
I remember leaving, and I'm very close to my parents. I left the floor for a break, like it was like 2:30 in the afternoon or something, took like a little 10-minute break. And I walked over to a nearby church. And I called my parents from my cell phone and I was crying because I was like, I feel like such a failure. I know I'm so grateful to have this job, but I know this is not what I'm supposed to do in the world, but I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. And my parents just said, you got to be happy. They're like, no matter what you do in the world, you have to be happy doing it. And if this isn't it, even though it's going to be hard, you have to find your way. So we're not going to come down on you for quitting. I've always been a very hard, like I babysat, I worked jobs all throughout when I was young. So they weren't worried about me providing for myself. They're like, you're going to figure it out. But if you don't want this, quit and move on. So
how long were you actually working at that?
About like 18 months or so.
Okay, so like a year and a half or so. Which is interesting too that your parents say that, after sort of you shared that, that money was a big source of, of conflict, or at least, the ideas around it or limitations around it. And they're turning around and saying to you, take that off the table from the standpoint of like, you need to do something deeper. You need to be driven by something more. Yeah.
Well, I think it was because they saw my performance like as a kid in terms of like, the moment I could start babysitting, I think I was like either 9 or 10.
Right.
Barely.
So you were a hustler.
I was total, but I was always like, I never not worked. I always loved, so they kind of knew like, we can tell this one to go follow her. She's going to be fine. So that was really cool.
Right. So you hang up the phone.
Hang up the phone. I wound up quitting a short time after, and I actually went to Boston. One thing I didn't tell you was that as a kid, I was a fine artist. So I was drawing and painting constantly. And I thought I wanted to be, when I was young, either a fashion designer or an animator for Disney, because art was really important to me. And after I left Wall Street, I said, maybe I've been focusing too much of my time and energy on like the intellectual and the business
rather than
side.
the artistic, creative.
Yeah. So I went and took a summer class up in Boston, Massachusetts. It was like an adult class, and it was all fine art. And I said, I'm going to bartend and I'm going to take art classes, and I need to really figure this out and see what my next step is going to be. So I did that, and I wound up saying, maybe magazine publishing would be good for me, because there's a blend of creativity
right.
and there's also commerce. There's advertising. It's kind of cool. Yeah. And as a young woman who liked being on the edge of things, I thought, well, maybe that could be a good blend of my talents. And it sounded glamorous, so that was cool too. So I got a job at Gourmet Magazine in the ad sales department, and I was like, this is awesome.
So wait, but Gourmet Magazine, cool, like magazine industry, cool, but ad sales?
Ad sales.
Which is sort of like maybe it is creative, but sort of, I think it's viewed from the outside as probably the least sort of on the creative side of that entire business.
I didn't know that. And that was the only job I could get. It's like,
so it's like you're in the door.
I'm in the door,
right? Yeah.
Totally. So I was like, again, grateful to be in there. And I love to eat since I'm Italian, and not that requires you to be. I love to eat, so I loved having a desk near the test kitchen of Gourmet Magazine, and they would always bring out snacks, and I would get to test every recipe.
So you're like, don't worry about my salary.
Yeah,
just keep me right where I am.
Keep me near the snacks, and everything's going to be fine.
Feed me.
But I did that for about 6 months, and I started having that feeling again, like this is not where you're supposed to be. And like that's when the panic started setting in, because one part of me knew I had all this potential, and I felt like I was supposed to do something important in the world. But I was like, this isn't it. And I looked ahead at my bosses at the ad exec and also the publisher. I was like, I don't want to be them. They're great people,
right.
but that doesn't look like my future.
Yeah.
So I thought I made the wrong decision. I was like, I'm on the ad sale side. Maybe I'm supposed to be more creative and go to the editorial side. I finagled my way over to Mademoiselle in the fashion department. Another entry-level job, and I was like, okay, this has got to be it. This has got to be it. I was like, panicking at this point, going like, maybe I finally found my way. And then after about 6 months or so, I started having that same nagging feeling. So I was tortured for a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, and it's funny too, because I'm just thinking in the back of my mind as I'm listening to you. I went through this really interesting parallel thing in the law where I started out and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. It's cool. And I went through law school. Paid for it, so I'm like, I need to at least do something with it, even though I wasn't all that drawn to do anything with it.
Yes.
So I started the federal government, and I'm like, I do that for a chunk of years, and then I'm thinking to myself, I'm same feeling, like this just really isn't feeling right to me. But I didn't want to totally leave that whole space. I'm like, let me flip sides and go to a private firm where I'm creating and doing deals.
Yep.
Because then I'll still be in the same place, and maybe that's just I need to stay here, but in a different way.
Yes.
And then like a year into that, similar feeling. I did the same thing. I looked at the people. I'm looking at like the managing partners, the people who had succeeded.
Yes.
And I'm looking at them and their lives. Noble people, smart,
yes.
Great livings, doing things. I had zero interest in being them. And it's this big awakening because you're working like crazy. And in the magazine industry in New York too, you work hard.
Yes.
And you start to think to yourself, why?
Yes.
If I don't want to be there and this is where it's leading me. But then the same thing, it's like, then what?
Yes. Well, this was where I love the internet because the internet was still kind of new. This is like in the late 90s, right around like 98, 99-ish. I think it was right around 1999. I was supposed to be working. I was on the internet and I stumbled upon this article about life coaching. This is at Mademoiselle. And I remember seeing this article, and there was this guy, Thomas Leonard, who was the founder of a place called Coach University, which was the first kind of life coaching, business coaching institute that there was. And they were doing teleclasses before like anybody ever else like knew what that was, when distance learning was just like in its infancy stages. I saw that article and something inside of me lit up like never before. I was like, intuitively, I was like, that. You know what I mean? Even though I was like, this is weird. Like, this sounds strange. But it took me back to why I was interested in psychology in the first place. And reading about how you could have a business that was totally focused on strategically helping people. It was very positive. It was all about moving forward. It didn't feel like it was, again, your parents screwed you up and this is what's wrong with you. It was very, very about looking ahead and planning. And I was like, I love all this. It seemed very creative. It was also very cutting edge at that time. And so I actually got the HR department at Condé Nast to pay. I don't know how I figured this out, but I'm a pretty good sales girl. To pay for my coach training, I somehow related it to what I was doing. And I signed up for a 3-year coach training program, and I was doing Mademoiselle during the day and then learning about coaching at night.
So in this whole time, how are you starting to feel about, I mean, number one, you're living like, you're doing 2 different things simultaneously, which really starts to burn the candle a lot.
Yeah.
Because you want to be good at both.
I loved it, and I was also, 23 at the time.
Right.
So my energy was off the charts already, but then add in that I was 23, it was like crazy. I was, not tired ever. But I was so into it. And then I had a little bit of a boss from hell and, at Mademoiselle. And then it came down to HR offered me a position at Vogue. And then I had enough coach training underneath me where I knew that this was the thing that I really wanted to do. And that was like my proverbial fork in the road. It was like, am I going to stick with this job and go work at Vogue, which is like amazing in the world of fashion. It's like the queen bee of every fashion magazine. Or am I going to quit and do this weird life coaching thing? And who the hell is going to hire a 23-year-old life coach? So I had all those doubts and insecurities, but I knew in my heart I had to do this. Like I had to do this. So I turned down the Vogue job, and I had, bartended my way through a lot of college. So I said, screw it. I'm just going to start bartending again and do that at night, and then just start this coaching thing during the day.
So how do you, but I mean, that's such an amazing question you brought up though. 23 years old.
Yeah.
Who am I?
Yeah.
So like for people to turn around and listen to me, like I've got this much life experience.
Totally.
And people are going to come and pay me to help direct them and figure out, like their problems and move them forward.
Yes.
Okay. So, you're working on a certification or you're, but still, who am I? And so many people, that is such a common thing. People come to me with that all the time. I know they come to you with that nonstop. It's like they're looking for the piece of paper or permission. So how do you deal with that? How did you resolve that?
So I think, my intuition is really, really loud in me. And it's almost like it overtakes everything else. And I remember having that concern, and it was like there was something deeper inside me that was operating, and something way more powerful than my mind, because I was like, I have to do this. I'm just going to figure it out. And I felt like, because also I was so enthusiastic about these ideas, like I was like, why are people not teaching other people this earlier? Like, why did I not learn this in school? That I feel like that overrode my concerns to a certain degree. Then I got great pictures done that made me look about 10 years older than I was. And I completely used the internet to mask my age, because all of my coaching clients were over the phone.
Okay.
And because I conducted myself with a level of professionalism, they didn't ask how old I was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you basically just said, I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to be uncomfortable if I'm uncomfortable. And,
Totally.
And I'm not going to bring up my age. And if nobody else brings it up, hopefully the quality of the help that I'm providing will just sort of like show that I'm wise for my age, or old for my years, and like intuitive on a different level. Yeah.
So that's how I got everything going. I was just I used the internet very skillfully to mask things. And of course I would never lie. But it didn't really come up.
Right.
So
that's what it's so much, I mean, we've talked about this privately, but so many parallels. When I left the law, the first thing that I did was I talked my way into a personal training job at this really shishi studio on the Upper East Side, where people would pay $10,000 for a 10-week program. Whew. And a week into that, I get my first $10,000 client. And I'm like, number one, I'm like, this guy is like, when I was a lawyer, I took a weekend exam to be a personal trainer, and like I put him on the treadmill as I'm trying to figure out what to do the first time I meet him, and knowing that he's paying $10,000 to work with me, and the first question out of his mouth is, so, how long have you been doing this? Oh my God.
Amazing.
And I'm like, just like hemming and hawing, like trying to figure out some way to not, because I won't lie to him, but like how can I sort of redirect it so long enough for him to understand that maybe I actually have some skills. And you kind of use the internet as that foil also. Yeah. But I think the deeper thing is that you discovered something that you were so strongly pulled to.
Yes.
And there was something in you that believed that you had something extraordinary to offer, even if your years on the planet or your, like credentials at that point didn't back it up yet.
Yep.
And you just said, this is the thing that I can't not do for now.
That was it. And that was really the thing that kind of pulled me through. And that got me through like those first couple of years of just doing it, of like writing my email newsletter.
Yeah.
And, you know, bartending, people would ask me, so what else do you do? Because most bartenders, not all, but most bartenders do that. And they also have some other gig that they're working on. So I would tell people, I was like proud. I was like, get on my newsletter list. Like I was building that newsletter list and, you know, making a martini going, what's your email address?
Right. And also as a bartender, it's almost like you're doing a lot of that, you know, like at
coaching.
The bar.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, totally.
It's like,
it was awesome.
You know, you're listening to stories and giving advice and doing all this stuff. So you probably become such a student of human nature tending bar too.
Yeah. It was great. And then, you know, and I also would meet like a lot of cool women who they would know who I was. They would know how old I was. And I would say, do you want to be my client? Like just practice client. You don't have to pay me, you know, and because they trusted me because they saw me every week, they're like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
So it was a great way for me to just like get my feet wet and start working out my skills and, you know.
So at that point, what's driving you? I mean, so we kind of know what you did.
Yeah.
But what's the thing inside that's fueling you? What are you seeking?
I feel like I love the process of learning and discovering new things so much. And I love seeing other people win. So like learning these new ideas and new skills that I'd never been exposed to before, and then being able to teach them to other people and watch the aha moments or the breakthroughs or the progress happen for them. I love seeing other people win. So that's what kept driving me. And I was like, wow, if I could do this with 5 people, I could do this with like 20 people or 100 people or 1,000 people. And it was really, it was exciting.
So it's like this deep quest for, on one hand, learning, and on the other hand, impact.
Yeah.
Like you want to learn stuff because you just light up because when you're learning stuff, but you want to see it work.
Totally.
In people's lives and your life.
Yeah, and that's what was really, and I love people. So it was really fun for me to be able to like hang out and talk with people or create things, and you know, it was awesome. It wasn't like I was getting rich because I wasn't making much money at all. Right. Most of my income was coming from bartending, you know, or any other side job I could do because I never wanted to not live in New York City. I love New York City, and it ain't cheap here. And girls got to have shoes, right? You know what I mean? So I was just doing whatever I could to keep it growing. But I hit a wall about 2 years in or so when I started writing my ebook. And
so what happened?
So I had taken this course from a guy named Dean Jackson, who's like my big daddy of marketing. Right. He was the first person that really kind of started teaching me about marketing. And it was about how to use ebooks as a marketing tool for your coaching practice. And he said, pick a subject that you're always talking about already. Maybe your coaching clients talk to you about it, and let's write take 4 weeks and write an ebook. And so I chose the topic of women and relationships because at the time I was engaged to be married. And it was the topic that all my women clients wanted to talk about, their boyfriends, their husbands, you know, and it was big in my life. So I started writing this ebook called Make Every Man Want You. And I was doing research and I was putting all my thoughts down. And in the process of doing that, I realized I really didn't want to marry the guy I was engaged to. And we were living in this tiny little studio apartment in the West Village. So our funds were commingled. Our money was completely intertwined. And I was terrified. And I felt like such a loser. I felt like a total fraud because here I was like this, you know, up and coming, like just aspiring life coach trying to get her own life together. Yeah. Just wrote this book and clearly, you know, I had a lot more work to do. Right. So that was really like, I wanted to like basically throw in my life coaching towel at that point because I felt like a failure. I mean,
so it's really interesting too, right? Because I think we see that so much, especially in this sort of personal development lifestyle and online business space a lot too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of appearance and there's a lot of reality.
Yes.
And there are a lot of very well-intended people also, but just, you know, like the reality doesn't meet the appearance quite yet. And I know a lot of people who aren't so ethic and they don't really care about it.
Yeah.
But if you really feel like you're ethical and you genuinely want to deliver and you feel like there's some misalignment, I had to stop. You. So how do you deal with it?
I took the ebook off the market and I stopped marketing my coaching practice. I kept the people that were already paying me because we had a relationship and I did feel like I was doing good work for them, but I would not take on anyone new. And I said, I really need to retool here. Like I really need to retool. Yeah. So I didn't have much money because, everything that kind of fell apart. And I had about $10,000 worth of debt just carried on through college, just stuff that you collect over time. And I actually moved home with my parents to figure things out because I felt awful. And I said, I am not going to coach people until I feel like my life is a true reflection. Not like it's perfect, but that I really feel like
more on the path.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like there's a real solidness to it. And that I can really teach from a place like, I know this works because this works in my life, and I'm going to teach you from that space. That's when I stumbled upon all of the live in the moment, the Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, Marianne Williamson, like this kind of whole new, for me it was new, wisdom that's so old, in terms of Buddha and all that stuff, but it was really new to me. And training myself to live in the moment and to recognize that I have a mind, but I don't have a mind, that was the complete turning point in my life. Like I had never felt more centered. I'd never felt more really in my own skin. And for the first time ever, I had always been what I call a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I love hip hop. I love writing. I love spirituality. I love business. And while I was building my coaching business, I always felt a little tortured. Like, how should I aim it? How should I focus it? Should it be about relationships? Because every traditional business building book I was reading was like niche down, niche down, niche down. You got to pick one thing.
Get really focused. And
that was really hard for me because I'm not a very focused person naturally. And so when I discovered all of this wisdom around living in the moment, it's as though something inside of me realigned. And I was like, needs to be the basis of everything I'm teaching. And simultaneously, I said, I'm passionate about dance. At this point, I was 25. If I don't do something in this area right now, the window for me is going to close real fast. Because at 25, to start off dancing, in most traditional circles, you're over the hill.
Right. It's kind of later on.
You're done. And especially with hip hop, I was like, I'm a white girl from Jersey, and it was interesting. So I actually started pursuing dance, and I gave myself permission for the first time to actually do all the different things that I wanted to do and not beat myself up about it.
Right.
That was the key, not beat myself up.
Which is really interesting because I'm curious also, like along the way, still in the background here, like you went to college for business.
Yeah.
And you're bartending, like you're dancing, stuff. Do you ever flip back to that and say, I can't believe like that was a waste of time, or like I can't believe I'm not drawing on any of that, or am I like integrating it in some way, like, or you just like close the door and move on?
No, I closed the door and move on because I was so excited about all these new things that I felt like, that was done. And college, to be really honest, I feel like the things that you learn in college have nothing to do with what you're going to do in real life. Like you learn how to negotiate, you learn how to manage your time, you make great friends, you have these amazing adventures. But for me, my experience, what I learned in the books has nothing to do with what I do now. But it was training ground for me to, I graduated valedictorian. Like I was into winning. I wanted to be the best that I could possibly be. So that was for me like training ground to always figure out how do I win at every corner.
Mm-hmm. So then you decided at 25, okay,
I'm gonna do it all.
I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
And you're living at your folks still.
I just moved back into the city with a roommate.
So you're bartending then
Bartending,
again?
totally.
So that's how you're paying your rent. So there's this thing that you're always falling back on because like this is the thing that's gonna let you pay your rent.
Totally. And I loved it.
Yeah, which is interesting too because I think so many people, they think that they have to go all in 100% on something and suffer a whole lot. Whereas I know so many people that have changed careers now, especially later in life.
Yes.
And it's so rare that somebody makes a big leap. Like the thing that normally happens is you keep the thing that's keeping you alive and paying your rent, and you start to build those other things on the side until they become viable and big enough to like step into.
Totally.
So for you, like that you were a little earlier in life, but you had that thing that you sort of like always kept you going.
Yeah, and then once I started dancing, I actually moved into teaching dancing very quickly. So that started to pay money. So that became another income stream. And then people started asking me to do fitness videos. And then Nike found me and I became a Nike elite athlete. And so those became other revenue streams in addition. And I started coaching again because I was so jazzed on this whole live in the moment philosophy. And I was like, this is amazing. So my coaching practice picked up again. So I just had a lot of plates in the air for a little bit.
So how was that juggling all of them?
I loved it because I loved what I was doing in dance and fitness. I loved what I was doing in coaching. And again, what was torturing me so much previous was my own mind saying I should be focused. That's what ate up so much of my energy and my emotional kind of stamina, was the thought that I shouldn't be into all of these things and I should stop doing one. And when I'm doing one, I was like, oh God, I should really be coaching right now.
So let's talk about this more though, because this is something that is fascinating to me. I was at a lecture maybe a month or two ago where, spiritual teacher.
Yeah.
And he shared a line that we've all heard in variation somewhere else, which is, like, if you're trying to drill 5 wells simultaneously,
Yep.
you're never going to hit water on any one of them.
Yep.
And one of the big explorations for me and for so many people I know also is, if you have multiple interests that you really care deeply about and you
Yes.
really love,
Yes.
do you move them forward simultaneously? Do you do one until that becomes a well that hits water, and once it hits water, then you get the next one, you pull the next one in, but that first one is still hitting water. How do you do this dance?
So for me, it was important, and there's a couple of things, because a lot of people ask me about this, because I don't think A, it's for everyone, and B, it's for everyone at particular times in their life, and this is what I mean. At that point in my life stage I was 25-ish, 26, 27, no mortgage, no kids, no husband, total freedom. If I wanted to eat like ramen noodles every night, do you know what I mean? It's completely fine. I was always responsible and paid my bills, but I didn't have outside obligations. So I could do a lot of that. I had tremendous energy and I never let the ball drop. And it wasn't like I was doing 50 things. I was doing, coaching. There was dance and fitness, and then there was bartending. So it wasn't like a zillion things all over the place.
Right.
But there was a lot of stuff happening. And I learned to be really good managing my time.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the keys was when I was bartending, I was fully bartending. Like I wasn't talking to myself about, oh my God, I should be dancing right now, or I should be working on my coaching practice. I was just really into bartending. And when I was dancing, I was like, being the best hip hop teacher, dancer I could possibly be. When I was being a coach, same kind of thing. And I think that practice of being fully engaged in the thing that you're doing conserves a ton of energy, and that's what most people don't do.
And I actually like that concept. I mean, I want to play with that a little bit. But did you ever hit a point where you're dancing?
Yep.
And you're thinking to yourself, I'm really good and I'm loving doing this. But if I did this like all of my waking hours, I would be at a different place. And that's the place that I want to be?
Well, I hit a point probably around 28, 29-ish, when Josh, my fiance now, who I had met when I was about 25 or so, and we were together for, I guess, 4 or 5 years, and he's an actor. And so he, goes away and does films and does all these beautiful things, and oftentimes he'd say, come with me. And because I was teaching 5 or 6 hip-hop classes a week, I was landlocked. And so I got to a point personally where I needed to make a choice, and I also realized I looked ahead into the future and I saw, what if I focus all of my time and energy in the dance fitness world? How far could I go? What does that look like in 10 or 15 years?
Right, so it was like the same thing you did in the magazine.
Yeah, financially, emotionally, physically, because it's a very physically demanding career. Okay, that's option A. Then let's take a look at bartending. I knew that wasn't going to be my future, so that was fine. And then I took a look at coaching and training and writing. And I said to myself, that I could feel, that's where I'm going to make the biggest impact. I can do it until I die. I can write, I can speak, I can make it, a difference to people. And this was the big thing, I'm not landlocked, because I had enough experience with the internet to know that I could build something that was completely mobile. I knew that I can make a difference in people's lives, and I don't need to show up in a dance studio to do it. And so for me, I realized financially, emotionally, spiritually, physically, that route was where I needed to okay, let's cut everything else out and let's do this for real. And that was right around 2008, 2009, when I kind of started dropping everything else away and done the fitness stuff. And I said, it was great. I really, really did it. But at a certain point, I just felt my passion starting to go not like I don't love it. And I dance like a crazy woman, but I knew that I got that out of my system and I'm ready now to focus.
Right. So let's kind of bring everything up to speed, because what you're doing now is kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
And what you've done in the last 3 or 4 years is more than fascinating. It's staggering.
Thank you.
And just the growth that you've experienced personally and the things that you brought to life and the level that you've been helping people. Talk to me about where your focus is now and what is this thing that is Marie and Marie TV? Flesh it out a bit.
I feel like I've been given a gift. I feel like one of my gifts is that I'm able to communicate in such a way where I can break sometimes complex ideas down into very, very simple terms that people can take action on. And I've seen this over, the past 10 years or so, that for whatever reason, and I don't have an explanation for this, but when I hang out with people, they up their game and they start doing things that they've talked about to themselves maybe for years. Like a concrete example, a really dear friend of mine, Laura, we were friends forever. And so she always wanted to start a blog and she always wanted to do all these things. And she literally told me, she's like, Marie, I've talked to myself about this for 5 years. Even though she's a good friend, she hired me as her coach through a program that I was doing. And she's like, Marie, in 1 year, I did things that I've been talking about for 5 years. And I feel like I have this effect on people. And I don't take responsibility for it like, oh, I'm so good, or like it's something I learned. I feel like it's something inside of me. So I am working to put that out there in the world because I think people have so much potential and I love seeing people win. So I'm like, how can I get me in more places so that people can live their dreams? It's not about me doing it for them, or not even necessarily that I'm teaching something so new, because I'm not. I'm just passing along ideas and knowledge that I've been fortunate enough to pick up from other amazing teachers, and realizing that whatever I've been given as a gift has this transformative, almost catalyst effect on other people. So I feel like it's my responsibility to keep doing that.
What is it, what do you feel inside when you see that happening?
So much joy and elation and a sense of unity and ecstasy. Like when I see it, if I'm on stage and I see people's minds open up or their hearts open up and they get something and they see their own truth or their own clarity, I literally start cheering. You've seen me.
I've seen it.
Yeah, because it's so exciting to me.
Which is an awesome place to be. And which is really kind of interesting because it brings us full circle to a certain extent, because you've been through this incredible journey. And I'm guessing in your mind, you're still very much at the midpoint, if not earlier.
Yes.
What are you building?
I feel like I'm building, there's a lot of things I'm building. I have a lot more to say that I haven't really said yet on a bunch of topics. I love seeing problems and then helping to find solutions. One of them is around, a lot of people are like, oh, God, I don't know my passion. I should be, following my passion. How do I figure out what I'm supposed to do in my life? And I have a lot to say on that subject. I have a lot to say on what I believe the future of entrepreneurship is, in terms of not old school, because I haven't built and sold, 5 companies for $1 billion and raised venture capital. I'm not of that ilk. I'm of a newer kind of, wild, wild west version where you have an idea, you have a computer, you have, some guts, and you put it out there and you make it happen. I want to talk a lot about that space and about how people really do have the power within them to create anything that they want. I don't care what that is. People don't have to want $1 million, $1 billion business. Maybe someone just wants to create their own little utopia of happiness and they work for a company. I want to deconstruct how people can have exactly what they want, give them the tools to do it. And for me, what I'm building is different avenues to make that happen. Books, online programs, articles, videos. Who knows what's going to get created in the next 10 to 15 years, that in terms of a media channel,
right,
that I'll be able to play in.
Yeah, because it seems like just in the last couple of years, your brand, what you're offering, what you're teaching, what you're sharing is evolving at a fairly rapid pace.
Yeah. There's a blend of personal development and spirituality, which I think for me, spirituality is a little, it's different than religion. It's more about seeing the beauty and the reverence and the love and the joy in everything, no matter what you believe in, if you believe in something in terms of a structured religion. I do think that people now and in the future, whether you own your own business or you work for another company, you have to start thinking like an entrepreneur.
Yeah, totally agree.
You've got to be proactive. You've got to look at the bottom line. You've got to take initiative. And those are the people that are not only going to be creatively satisfied, but from a financial perspective, they're always going to have something to do in the world.
Yeah.
And they're going to feel good about it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think there's so much, the word entrepreneur, everyone's like, well, that's what you do when you leave the big, comfortable thing and you go on your own. But the reality is, the way the economy is these days, the way the world is evolving, it's a mindset. It's not even a mindset, it's an approach. It's a philosophy and ideology and sort of like a methodology.
Yeah.
You could be, the CMO at a multi-billion-dollar company, but you bring an entrepreneurial bent, an approach to it.
Actors, singers.
Yeah. no matter
artists,
who you are.
It doesn't matter who you are. And that's what's really exciting to me about the age that we're in right now. And I think that's what's most exciting to me about, we have this incredible opportunity with technology to do anything we want to do. So what are we going to do with it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, are you going to wait around for someone to like hand you something, or are you going to go out and create it? And I feel like for me, that's a challenge to all of us to say, okay, what do you really want?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing also. And I look at it because, I come from law, but then brick and mortar entrepreneurship for a dozen years.
Yes.
Like I owned physical facilities with people and overhead and inventory and operating expenses. And when I started to move more into, the online world and writing and building businesses sort of in the digital space, it's very hard to go back, even though I love brick and mortar entrepreneurship. I love walking into a place and seeing my people.
Yeah.
I love building a culture. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But when you're a little further into life, you have responsibilities and you start, and I look at the fitness world right now also, which is where I had my businesses. And there's so much that's broken that I would love to fix and could fix and change, have an impact for so many people. But when I look at the relative level of risk and investment and this, how long it would take me to do these things in that space versus what I can do tapping technology, it becomes really hard for me to justify going back into that space as much as I'm drawn to it, because I look at technology and I'm like, same thing. I would let, I have a family, like I love to be around them, and I don't necessarily want to be location independent right now. But
You mean location dependent?
Dependent, yeah. Independent. I like having a home. Like I like having a place.
Yeah.
So like to me, I don't have a strong desire to have to be able to bounce around, but I can see that down the road, once my daughter's out of school, that we would like to spend 3 months in Costa Rica or, the warm weather in different places. And, if I'm locked into a physical business, I can't do that.
Right.
Whereas if I'm building something, in the ether, it makes it much more, I can operate from anywhere in the world right now.
Yeah. And to tag off what you said, I've been able to, we have 6 full-time employees, but we've created culture virtually. And when we get together, it's like we do in-person company retreats. Everybody came out to our place in Sag Harbor and put everybody up in a hotel. And it's like we spent a couple days together, and there's a very clear culture, and I just think we're in a new space where we can build those things and have that kind of different, it's a whole new company. It's awesome.
It is. And it's amazing to think that you can build a company culture when your employees are distributed around the world.
Yeah.
But you can.
Yes.
And it can be really powerful. I want to ask you also, because I know that one of your beliefs is giving back. Both participatory and money.
Yeah.
You have a really strong commitment to philanthropy.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about where that comes from and what it's about.
When I first had the idea for my business, when I was discovering coaching, I realized while I never wanted to worry about money, I actually don't need that much. Like I'm not the kind of person who, spends a lot shopping. Like, if you come into our house, it's like Josh and I realized we're like, wow, we don't even have an HD TV. Oh my God. Because our old TV works so well that we didn't even think to buy an HD TV until we realized that we didn't have one. Do you know what I mean? So we keep things for a long time. So I never feel like I need that much money. And I feel like there's so many things in the world that I would love to see solved, especially around gender inequality and around education for girls and women. And when I learn about these stories, I'm like, money can solve a lot of problems. It can't solve every problem, but there's a lot of things that money can solve. And I figure, well, if I'm really good, or if I'm getting good at generating revenue and income and profit, it's fun for me to be able to let's direct some of this to places that really matter, that really, really need it. Because, that's what motivates me is I want to see the world become a better place. And if I can use my savvy as an entrepreneur to facilitate that happening, it's awesome.
Yeah,
Plus it makes business more fun. It's for me, so with, we call it change your life, change the world. And the idea behind that is because we're a personal development company. If you invest in one of our programs, a book, an audio, anything, an event, and you're paying us money, you're not just going to change your life, but you're actually going to change the world, because we're going to take a portion of that money and we're going to siphon it out to different things. You know, we've partnered with Charity Water, we've done stuff with Richard Branson and Virgin Unite,
right, yeah.
Stuff with Girl Up. So we just look for opportunities where we feel like there's alignment, where someone that's investing in one of our programs can feel great because they're like, I'm learning new skills, I'm developing capabilities, I'm bettering myself. But it's not just Marie who's like, you know, getting rich off it. I'm getting rich in my own, and then, you know, it's going out into the world in a different way.
No, I love that. Last question for you.
Yeah.
So the name of this project is the Good Life Project.
Yes.
When I offer that term to you, what does it mean to you to live a good life?
You know, for me, a good life is a couple of things. One, being fully present in each moment, because I find that when I am fully present, like, you know, you and I having this great conversation now, or if I'm with Josh and we're just hanging out, it does not matter what we're doing, but I feel so peaceful and content, and like all is well in the world. Even if there's challenges, I feel a sense of peace. And that's one component of it. And I think the other component for me of living a good life is having good friends and having a lot of fun. I think any time that I slip into taking things too seriously, you know, like, I don't know, you walk around your day and you're like, wow, I have so many things to do. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is all awesome stuff to do. And I set my life up this way. I better not take it so seriously and have a little fun and put on some music and dance. When that kind of thread of celebration and irreverence and not taking things too seriously, that's what living a good life feels like to me.
I love that. Awesome conversation as always. We could go on for a long time. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you. I love talking to you.
So excited to see where you're going from here.
Thanks.
And my guest today has been Marie Forleo. I'm Jonathan Fields signing off for Good Life Project.